Welcome to the Threshing Floor Podcast, your premier destination for discussion and commentary on the redemption trading card game and its community. Kick back and relax as we catch you up on the latest news, tournament results, and deck building strategies to take your game to the next level. Now, here are your hosts, John Hendricks and Ager the Wise.
That's right. I am John Hendricks. He is Jake Antonette's, also Ager the Wise. Cool nickname. I still don't have one. But hey, we're here. We are on the heels of a pretty significant couple of weeks here as far as getting the tournament season kicked off. We had the Oregon State tournament, followed up the next weekend by the Kentucky State tournament. So there's a lot of information around the community buzzing about the turnout at Kentucky State. Yes, there was a lot of cool things, including, we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the podcast here, but Big Clay showing up at Kentucky State. That was pretty cool. But before we get into anything crazy here and forget to do so, I definitely want to make sure that we honor our sponsor for the podcast. We are brought to you proudly by Your Turn Games. Got to actually see Andy Fish and hang out with him a little bit in Kentucky. It's cool to see him with all of his stuff there. And, you know, it was just a great time. And anytime you can get to hang out and put the faces together. Like I feel like we're a close-knit community. We talk a lot, but getting to go to Kentucky and see a bunch of the people that you would normally see, you know, at like nationals and the bigger scenes for the game was kind of cool. Anyway, I thought because this is the first one where we have multiple state tournaments to go over and we have the results to share, we just kick off the podcast and go with that. You got a problem with that,
Jake? I do
not
have any problems with that.
Let's turn our attention to the most recent tournament results and see where players have stacked up since our last episode.
Yep. So we've got our tournament results here. We'll go over those. Before we get into the state tournaments, we were provided with some results from a district that happened in Minnesota on the 29th of March. I know it's been a little while since we recorded. We're not going to go down that rabbit trail of offering excuses or anything, but you want to go ahead and give us those results?
Yeah, so in
Jake?
Type 1, we had first place taken by Maxwell Graff, second place by Jaden Alstead, and third place by Joe Andretti. And in booster draft, we had Jaden Alstead taking first, Mike Turnridge taking second, and Joe Andretti taking third again. Way to go. And in teams with drafted decks, Maxwell Graff and Calvin took first, Justin Alstead and Nehemiah took second, and Nehemiah Graff took second. So some good turnouts there for that group.
Yep. So if you want to have any of your tournament results shared here on the podcast, if you'll get those to us, we'll be more than happy to shout out your play group. And everyone loves a little shout out, right?
Definitely.
Oregon State.
Yeah.
We've got Oregon State, and you might as well rename this tournament, you know, See the Tree State Tournament, because Chad, aka See the Tree, cleaned house here.
Insane.
I mean, it's he did his thing here. So in Type 1, Chad won that, followed by Alan Gonzalez in second and Aiden Reisenbigler in third. Type 2, Aiden Reisenbigler came in first.
Aiden.
Alan Gonzalez came in second, and then Alexander Goad came in third. Teams, you had Chad winning that along with Carter Bleen. Aiden Reisenbigler and Alan Gonzalez teamed up and came in second. And then Alexander Goad and Matthew Etzel came in third to round that out. In booster, are you seeing the theme here?
Seeing the theme.
Chad France came in first. Aiden Reisenbigler came in second, and Alan Gonzalez came in third. Sealed, Chad France came in first. Aiden Reisenbigler came in second, and Alan Gonzalez came in third.
You can just say ditto there. Exact same results.
Ditto. So Chad, by the looks of this, assuming that Chad did not play Type 2, he won every other category. So, I mean, I don't know if he played Type 2 or not. I don't think he normally does. So I'm willing to go out on a limb, and I'm a big guy, but I'll climb out on this limb and you know, put my faith in this tree limb to say that I believe Chad won every category he
It looks
played.
like it. And we know Chad is a force of power here, and I've seen him practicing more and more these last few weeks. So he's definitely on fire right now. Someone to be reckoned with.
There is a distinct connection between how much you play the game and how well you do at tournaments. And I'm starting to figure out that if I want to get better results, I'm going to have to put in more time. But anyway, so Chad France did well at this tournament. You'll be hearing a little bit about him because we are also on this podcast. I know we kind of jumped straight into it because we had so many results that we wanted to go over and things. And it's kind of a loaded episode because we haven't recorded and we've had a lot of stuff happen. But I believe, I feel confident. Actually, I know 100% because I came up with them before we did this recording. When we get to the power rankings, we're debuting the power rankings for the first time this tournament season. Chad's going to be on there because he is on fire. So it's just a matter of how high he's going to be on that list.
How high does that tree go? And the trees go really high in his neck of the woods there.
And they do grow really tall also in the jungle.
Ooh.
So let's transition and tell you about
Kentucky State.
You want to run down those results for us?
Type 1, we have Baboony Tim Esty is taking first place, followed in second by Peter Lee, and third by Simon Liu. And in Type 2, Brian Jones takes it down, Jeremy Chambers taking second, and Chris Faxman taking third. I needed him to do that at Nats. Come on. Let's go. In teams, we had Jaden Alstead and Tim Estes taking first, Stephen Brooks and Mark Underwood taking second, and Simon Liu and Joshua Zhang taking third for team.
That's a typo.
Oh, Josiah Zhang.
That's Josiah Zhang. Yes, I am.
I thought that was an awesome name, Josua.
I'm sorry.
Josua.
I'm sorry, Josiah.
Hey, that's still an awesome name.
I messed up here. Typo, but
Booster draft. We have Jaden Alstead, Zane Brooks, and Nate Swinton, first, second, and third, respectively. And sealed Ryan Greason, Nate Swinton, and Liam Collier, first, second, and third, respectively.
That was really fun to see. Not only the big field at Kentucky, but also seeing the playgroup members for that group that's under the tutelage of Brian Jones actually do well. Finishing second and third in Type 1 in a loaded field, and then, sprinkling around and being involved, doing well with some of the teams play and whatnot. It's really nice to see that, because sometimes I feel like, and I don't want to say like Chad just beats up on his guys, but there's generally a playgroup leader, and then everyone else. There's just a gap
playgroup
there.
sensei, and he's there.
Yes, and I feel like Brian, even though I think I would take Brian over any of his kids in a one-off, like who's going to win this?
He's trained them that they could take a game off of him. If he stumbles, they could put him down. So,
Yeah, definitely. So, while we're going over tournament results, we'll just go ahead and tell you about one of the unofficial tournaments here.
Lackey Grand Prix.
And this is for the Lackey Grand Prix number 20. So they ended up, because we had a string of a bunch of, games not being able to get finished, they decided to cut off the last round and just go ahead and move to Top Cut. With that, there was 4 players that made Top Cut, so we do top 4 in the Lackey Grand Prix. And that is Mr. Jay Chambers, Chad France, who Chad, again, I think after he won a recent Lackey Grand Prix, someone was talking about him being the greatest Lackey Grand Prix player of all time or whatever, because he always makes Top Cut and he's always involved and he's won a bunch. And he just continues that trend here. And then we have Jaden Alstead, which Jaden did say he was going to take his deck, what is he calling it lately?
Banishment was it?
It's banishment.
Banishing Act.
Banishing Act. Yeah, Banishing Act. And he was going to just play that throughout the Lackey Grand Prix and tweak it and get to see how his mind works week over week, making changes and things. And he seems to have done well since deciding to try to be a little bit more competitive with this versus playing, different decks and things. And then
there's somebody else
yourself,
that we don't talk about in the top 4.
You rounded out the top 4 there for Top Cut. So those are the ones that made Top Cut. And then we've already had the 2 games played to get us to the finals. And Jay played Chad and he defeated him 5-3. And likewise, Jaden defeated Jake here 5-3.
You want a little bit of, I guess he's going to make a video out of it. I shouldn't spoil the video. Let's just say,
yeah,
I was embarrassed.
But is it truly embarrassing if you're losing to Jaden? I feel like you can take some solace in the fact that you didn't lose to me or something.
It depends on how you lose, and I think I played poorly enough that I could be embarrassed. At the same time, like I have less time to focus on redemption these days, so I know that I'm a little bit behind on the sharpness right now. I'm pretty dull right now, and that's okay. It's not a season for me to be sharp right now. So,
well, there's always things you can strive for in your limited time, so it just keeps you humble.
After the baby comes and then he learns how to play redemption, and I can practice with him, then I'm going to be the master sensei.
Nice. So Jaden did make the finals there, and he will be squaring off against Jay, who was actually, for us not to have any in-person results from him yet, Jay's actually been on a pretty good heater here to start the season.
He's always
the Lucky
around.
Grand Prix stuff. He's also, in the Zoom Discord as those are happening.
I just beat him today, though. I got lucky, though. That was pretty
bad. Hey, is it luck or maybe luck. You're turning it around?
I made a play. There's no video on this, so I can spoil it. I made an attack with a character that I thought was a priest. And he's like, oh, that's a bold attack, so he must have something. And I was like, oh, that guy's not a priest. I can't play anything on him because he played Glory earlier. So he's like, fine, you get it. You got it. I'm like, that was an accident.
Okay.
Accidental bluff for the win.
Yes. You accidentally got the win there. But anyway, so looking forward to seeing how that match turns out. And with Jaden being involved, we should be able to see it on his channel at some point. So definitely looking forward to see how that goes. But that's going to let us move and focus on a couple of upcoming tournaments.
Northwest Regional.
So the Northwest Regional, and this is going to be important because this is the first regional on the calendar, right? And with that comes, it's the first opportunity for the new Prince of the Air promo, which is, I feel like that's the hottest promo in quite a while. It's a game changer for people wanting to get, yes. So them being the first ones to have access to that is pretty cool for them because they'll be able to barter and trade with it a little bit more than you would normally get to do with some of these promos. Anyway, this is going to be on April 24th through the 26th. So that's a 3-day tournament. It's hosted by Scott Stamp, and it's going to start at the LaPrine Library and eventually move to the Sun River Airbnb in LaPrine or LaPrine. I'm not sure. I'm not from there, so I don't know how you say it. So if I'm mispronouncing it, I'm just but a humble redneck from Alabama, but that is in Oregon. Sealed is going to be $7.50. Booster is going to be $25, and all other categories are going to be free.
That's awesome.
And it looks like the start time is going to be 4 p.m. on Thursday, 9 a.m. on Friday, and 10 a.m. on Saturday. So the next tournament here, you want to go ahead and
I'll take
go over that? I don't have a sound clip for this one because I had to guess at which state tournaments and regional tournaments because I wasn't able to get a lot of feedback on trying to compile a list. So I'll get this in the future, but we don't have a sound clip right now.
Let's try this one. Massachusetts State.
There you go.
MA State Tournament, April 26th, hosted by John Michelizzen at Netcast Church in Danvers, Massachusetts. Sealed is 20, booster 25. All other categories are free. Starts at 10:30 a.m. on April 26th, not 22nd, 26th. That's going to be an awesome event.
If you show up on the 22nd, you'll just be early and ready to go.
Camp out, read your Bible, test with some friends in the parking lot.
Yeah. So that is the state tournament there in MA, Massachusetts. And these tournaments are all part of, I like to say it, the road to nationals. And that's what we're working towards. That's the culmination of this tournament season where we all get to hang out. So I'm going to make sure that we continue to give you some information, just kind of keep it at the forethought of a lot of what we're doing here when we record podcasts. But nationals at the time of recording is only 109 days away. I feel like it's like an abstract thought that most people think it's just, several months away and then we'll get to it. But we're coming up on the 3-month mark, and you need to already made some plans or at least start setting some money aside maybe. You need to do some kind of action if you're planning on going so that it doesn't sneak up on you, because it's never a fun thing for it to sneak up on you and you feel like, man, I got to decide on what deck I'm playing because everyone's going to be back and forth on some of that already. So you already have that. You don't want to throw into it a financial situation or a lodging situation. And it's nice because there is some lodging available at the church. You just need to reach out and let those guys know that you'll be using that. There is a pre-registration form to handle all of that. So this tournament is going to be hosted by Jamie Collar, Stephen Brooks, Joshua Myers, and Roy Cruz. And a lot of that, Arkansas play group were part of the field at the Kentucky State tournament. So it was nice getting to hang out with some of those guys. And then we'll get to do it again, starting July 31st when we're there in Arkansas for the national tournament. And that's going to be at Rogers Christian Church in Rogers, Arkansas. For the cost, sealed is going to be $20, booster is going to be $30, and then all other categories are going to be $10 each. And it's going to start at 8 a.m. each day.
Man. Really exciting. I wish I could go, but it's
we're still. Is it a hard no yet?
I think it's like 98%, 95% no.
Okay.
So
I think the last time we talked, it was getting around like 80 to 90%.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
maybe I'm telling myself that just I don't know, but I don't expect to be there.
Okay. Well, if you do end up being there, we'll definitely enjoy getting to hang out with you. But
destroying me.
Understandable. We can let you take a year off because of the the impending arrival of your first child. Yes. I guess that's a good enough reason to not be at nationals.
Hey man, he's going to be a prophet. He's going to be shuffling cards and flipping to prevent all cards. It's going to be awesome.
Nice. So part of nationals, though, I do want to spotlight because I don't want it to sneak up and just be kind of an afterthought. I want to hype it up a little bit. I've gotten a lot of motivation for that because of Brian Jones. He's hammering on me about it, but we did last year, and you mentioned earlier, that's what you needed Chris Fashman to do at nationals. So part of the thing at nationals that you're referring to was the booster, or not the booster, I almost said booster, the fantasy draft event where we, had 4 people pick players, and then those players, based on how they performed in the categories they played, would give a total.
We had actually
for their team.
Correct you. We had 3 people picking players and 1 person picking judges and people who are organizing the
event. Yes. There was no mercy.
No mercy
for you. Like you had no shot. But I saw the error of my ways. I had talked a little smack about the North Central region earlier in the year. And then when it came time to start drafting players, I drafted heavy from that region. And I just want to thank those guys for carrying me. The first ever win for this event. And we are putting it back on for this coming year. It's on the registration form. If you want to be a draftable player, so that means you want to have your name entered into the pool to be drafted, then you just select yes. You don't have to do anything beyond that. Just play. And your name will be involved as far as you will be available to draft. Someone may pick you, and then whatever your performance is through the categories that you're already going to play, that will just add up for the score for the person that drafts you. Obviously, I'm doing it, and I'm not sure who else we're going to have drafting, but I do think it would be cool as we lead up and get towards nationals to maybe pick out a couple of different ways to maybe help pick out who's going to be also picking. Yeah. So, give someone in the community a chance that's going to be at nationals, because it'd be nice to have people that are there in person for the, the event of the draft, but find a way to involve someone from the community. So if you're interested in being one of the people that is drafting players and picking a team, I'm not sure how we'll do that, but I just want to put it on your radar. Hey, that might be an option, and we'll come up with some cool ways. If you have suggestions on ways that we can do that, reach out, let me know. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll put our heads together at some point and come up with something there. But I want to mention it because I don't want it to be an afterthought to where we show up at nationals and we're doing it and nobody's really thought of it prior to. So I'm working on trying to put some better details around it. Last year was kind of the first time, so it was kind of fly by your by the seat of your pants anyway, but I don't want the second year to be like that. I want it to be a little bit more involved, and I definitely want to thank the guys hosting Nationals for allowing us to be part of the pre-registration form so that it could at least be on there so that we can have a little bit more data for categories players might be playing and things of that nature. So we don't put someone like Jake. I feel like we set you up to fail last year. So
that's okay. The guys I picked did do really well. The guys that actually played did do really well. Like, I think per average, I had a really good, like, for people playing, I had a really good.
Oh, yeah. You really
good score.
Okay. Yeah. I'll give you that. Anyway, so we've talked about tournament results. We've talked about upcoming tournaments. Now I think we're here. And I think this is one of the coolest things that we get to do as a podcast is
we take out our
step back.
We take out our scouters and we look at the people powering up.
We look at the whole picture.
And
yes.
And then you say, it's over 9,000. Yeah. So.
So it's cool that we get to do this. And it's also cool that with this first edition of the power rankings that we're able to include some people that, have not been on the power rankings before. I think we have at least 4 brand new people here. And it's really cool that we got to involve some of the students there from the Kentucky Play Group, because moving forward, they may not have as much opportunity and things because this is kind of like their big event. So the ones that did well here, it's nice to be able to include them here. So we'll get started with the first edition of the power rankings for 2025.
And now, it's time to find out where the hottest players in the game stack up in this week's Power Rankings. This is the top 10 redemption players right now, according to us.
That's right, according to us. So you want to go ahead and take this first one right here?
I do want to take this first one. Bringing in
10.
Yeah, bringing in 10. I forgot we had each number with the sound thing. It's been a while.
We're a little rusty with
back.
it.
Roman Signorello from the Kentucky Play Group. I hope I said his last name close enough, but man, way to jump on the power rankings, Roman.
Yep. And I will say that it's nice to be able to include him here because I talk a lot of smack to him. He's one of those guys that's just fun to kind of, not really bully, but
just to rip.
It's fun back and forth. Yes. I hope it is taken in good fun because that's exactly how I intend it. Anyway, it's nice to have him on this list. Roman, this is your shout out for the podcast. I mean, you may never be here again, but you are here right now.
Oh, man, he ribboned him still. He's going to do it for sure.
9.
At number 9, we've got Simon Liu, and this is another Kentucky Play Group member, and he came in 3rd in Type 1. But another reason that I like including him here is he is a fellow Blue player.
Let's go.
He was playing Patriarchs mostly, Genesis, and I think it was far and away. I think it was leaning into the Patriarch stuff, but he was using Father Abraham, with the convert stuff and doing a little bit more of the meek play. He was also including one of my favorite cards in the game, which is Peace.
Nice.
And he was playing a more modern defense with it, playing Herods. And I think I don't know anyone else that's played Genesis and Herods since.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was mostly Herods that I was playing that year when I played Genesiples and got 8th place in at Nationals in Knoxville. So that's kind of what that deck reminded me of is some of that stuff. But it was nice to see him be able to do that. And he's got the deck tuned to where it's like super fast. So he can just pop off and start drawing cards and whatever. So it's really cool to see a fellow Blue player doing well, especially a young one that hasn't been ruined by, some of the struggles of Blue quite yet. So hopefully you stick with it, Simon. Thanks for repping Blue.
8.
At number 8, we have another player from the Kentucky Play Group, Peter Lee.
Yep. And he is a very strong player. This is the matchup where Tim ended up and we'll talk about his video detailing Kentucky State and his games, but he ended up winning that 4-3 in a timeout. And I think Peter had him on the ropes pretty good for a couple of turns. So very good showing there. And had that game gone any differently, I mean, you might have been looking at him to potentially be atop the leaderboard there. Pretty good showing.
7.
At number 7, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who won the Fantasy Football League, but he's not here for that. He's here for winning the Connecticut State Tournament a few weeks back. And this is Chasmanian Devil, also known as Charles Loria, given his government name here. But definitely wanted to include him because he was able to win that tournament. We didn't get the full results there, but I did get wind that he won that playing a pretty cool
We'll have to
deck.
talk about that someday, for sure.
Yeah, I believe he was playing Queen T on defense. I heard something about that. But either way, we'll include him here. I think he deserves to be here for his early win here in the season. And I don't know, Massachusetts State is coming up. Maybe he double dips and wins again and pushes even higher on this list. I don't know. I don't know if he's attending that or whatnot, but I definitely want to make sure we include him here early on for that big win at the first state tournament. That was the first one that we had this season, and he was able to pull it out.
6.
At number 6, we have the organizer. We have the booster champion. We have Brian Jonesy Booster Jones.
The former
Let's
Mr.
go.
Classic.
Former Mr. Classic. This guy's awesome.
Yeah, it's not every day you get called out for being high in the rankings here, and they call out what you lost. But this is the former Mr. Classic, and I'm sure he'll be back at some point. But Brian also a really good showing playing Big Clay and meeting up with Tim there in the finals.
That's so cool.
And then the loss dropped him down to, I think it was 5th, but I mean, he was right there, and he also won Type 2. So I feel like he's really deserving of being on this list.
5.
At number 5, we've got, well, he's not Mr. Classic, but he is still a Chamber and one of the Chamber brothers. We've got Jay right here. And Jay has, for someone, and I mentioned this before when we were talking about the Lackey Grand Prix, I believe, but for someone that doesn't have any official in-person results yet for this tournament season, I feel like Jay has done everything he can to be kind of at the forefront of the competitive scene here. He's had really good results and showings throughout the Grand Prix and whatnot, and I think he's well deserving of being on this list. And I think at the current pace that he's playing, I would assume that we're going to get some in-person results that are going to back up kind of where he is. So this is a little bit of a, he definitely deserves to be on this list, but I think it'll be even more cemented once we start having some in-person results where he can play, because he seems to be on fire to start the season.
4.
At number 4, this is a name you're going to hear a lot listening to this podcast. You got the innovator, the jailer himself, Jaden Alstead. There's not much to be said. He's almost always on this list, and he's always a threat, and he's always bringing his own style of deck.
Yeah, and he's trying to banish all of your stuff. So I feel like he's, if we were to say anyone in the community was going to do well with one of those outlier strategies and try to take it and really capitalize on both offense, defense, and all of the support pieces for it, I feel like he'd be the one that we pinpointed. So I think it's really cool to see him doing well with one of those, less than what was previously mainstream. It might be mainstream now that he's had some success with it and put it all over his channel, but definitely deserving to be here for Jaden.
3.
At number 3, we've got another Chamber, but this one is the brand new reigning Mr. Classic. There it is, Mr. Classic.
Mr. Classic.
This man sitting in his bedroom on a lonely Thursday night, rain dripping and running down against the window pane, looking out, just wondering what his future might be 3 years from now. And he goes to www.createmybelt.com. I really don't know what website. Designs a Mr. Classic belt, puts it out there, isn't even involved in the first rendition of this tournament where, 8 stalwarts from the game's previous era was invited to compete for this thing, along with a wild card who upset Red Dragon Thorn. But he wasn't involved in that first one, and then he was involved last year. So it took him a couple of times, but I feel like looking out at his window that rainy night, just wondering what the future would hold, He wanted to design this belt, and he had intentions of one day having this thing come back home.
I think you're right. That's a great story.
He wanted it on the Chambers family farm.
It sounds like a movie.
You know, it does sound like a movie. And I believe that not only did he win Mr. Classic this year and get the belt, but he really brought home the name of the game, Redemption, because he found redemption for himself.
No,
and
dude,
he wore that thing with so much.
This is going to be a movie, dude.
So much pride. I'm telling you, when we went to Taco Bell that night and he had it around, dude, he would not be separated from that belt. And I think that him being Mr. Classic is kind of a cool thing because he's going to rock the belt. We had Jaden win it, and he had it on his shelf, displayed it. Then we had Brian. He had it at a few tournaments and things. I think Jeremy's going to wear this thing around like it's real deal Holyfield.
That's
awesome. You know what I mean?
Man.
Like at any moment, someone could challenge him for it. So it was really nice to see Jeremy get the win here and bring that belt back home where it was to start with. And I know that there was a couple of rivalries built throughout these first 3 years of this. So now, next year, when we have this tournament, we're going to be looking at potentially Brian winning it back, Jaden winning it back. Great. Will Jeremy defend it? Or will, from the top rope, Jay Chambers, the other Chambers brother with the elbow.
That's crazy,
Will he come out of nowhere and win it? I don't know.
In a world full of heroes and lost souls, one man finds what it means to find redemption.
Yes, there we go. But anyway, just I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how it rounds out next year. Now that it's kind of cool that it's going to someone new each year. As much as I would have liked to have seen like a repeat champion just for the bragging rights of it, I think it's cool that it's hopping around a little bit.
I'm calling next year's Keegan. Keegan's winning Mr. Classic next year.
That's a bold strategy.
Let's do it. I cannot believe in him.
But anyway, definitely think that Jeremy, for winning Mr. Classic, deserves to be on this list. He also came in second in Type 2 and was kind of toward the top tables there throughout the day for Type 1. But in a loaded field, it's hard to squeeze into that top 3 in a loaded field like that. But definitely deserving to be on the list.
At number 2, if you go to the west of the United States, you're going to see amazing forests with amazing trees. And that's where we're seeing this tree. Chad France landing at number 2, bringing down the hammer. This guy's on fire.
The biggest trees have the strongest roots.
Oh, man, dude. The best taglines here.
I don't know. Or the deepest roots. And it's kind of ironic because there's a set for roots. But definitely, I am super hyped about Chad being here on this list because I think Chad is one of those people that gives so much back to the game, or tries to, with all of his decks. And when he puts it out, you know, you're going to get the full-on explanation for it, but he's also always trying to innovate and come up with new concepts. And he's now, decided that he's going to share all of that up front as he comes across it. I think it's cool to see someone that's always trying to give back and enrich the community being able to have competitive success like this. But there can only be one number 1. And I think by process of elimination...
1.
You talk about trees, big dog. You talk about trees. There's trees in the jungle.
There's trees in the jungle.
There's monkeys, and there's big monkeys. Is he a gorilla now if he's a big monkey?
He's a big monkey. He's a gorilla.
I don't know, but I kind of like his little beer gut monkey that he's got on his videos now. It's pretty cool. But this is Mr. Tim Estes, and this cat, I mean, just a whirlwind of success since he came into the game. And I think it's really cool to see the reward. You know, we talked about it or mentioned it, that there's that distinct connection between how much you play the game, how much you invest into it, and then the rewards that you get as far as your successes as a competitive player. It's nice to see someone that is willing to put in the work, be willing to innovate and try new things, get to reap some of those rewards for that. And not only that, but it's kind of like Chad, always willing to give back and work towards enriching the community and things. So I am proud to say that the number 1 player right now in these power rankings is someone that I think does a lot for this game and definitely should be rewarded for that, alone, separate from the competitive success. But we're glad we can spotlight him here for his successes, and that is Tim Estes, Mr. Baboonie Tim. your fellow chef in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Love cooking with him.
It's nice to see. And if you had to put money on it right now, and it was the field or Tim for nationals, and I know that's one player versus the entire field, it's still a discussion. Like, you have to think about that. Like, you can't just say, no, I'm taking the field 99%.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a distinct discussion or internal debate that you would have to have whether this guy has just cracked the formula and the code and he's him.
Mm-hmm.
He might be him.
Tim is a force to be reckoned with. I would still give the field the lead, but like, you have to like recognize the power that he's bringing, the skill he's bringing, the fortitude and stamina he's bringing to these tournaments. He's proving himself week after week, getting better, shoring up his game, cutting out errors. He's really good. That's an understatement.
Yeah. Also, I want to make sure that we show that, or we highlight the fact that we had 4 brand new players on this list. So the top power rankings that we do are not just going to feature the people that we know are the top players in the game. If Justin Alstead came and was playing right now, you would assume he would be one of the higher ranked players. Josh Potratz as well could easily be here. There's several other players within the community that could be on the top of this list. I know that you didn't want necessarily to be included, or last year you didn't want to, but I could have easily slid you into one of those last few spots on the list. So there's several players that we know that when you talk about the average snapshot of good players, there's other players on here. But what we're going to do is use these rankings to highlight the people that are playing now and having successes in the moment. And it's nice for us to be able to spotlight and feature some new players on this list that are on there for the first time. So definitely congratulations to the ones that got the shout out for the first time here. And it'd be interesting to see if we can continue this trend of having some new players pop up. So get out there, tweak your decks, get creative. Maybe don't get creative and do a 100-card deck, because that's not for the faint of heart. But
or do a 100-card deck.
I don't know.
Yes,
you do whatever you want, but we're definitely looking forward to ways to get more people involved on this list than just sticking with, people that have that reputation of being top competitive players. We want to reward the in moment successes that players are having. All right, so that's going to bring us to another cool thing that we're going to get to share. We mentioned this before, but we are going to go ahead and announce it for the first time.
Let's take a moment to give away some booster packs from Your Turn Games as we announce the Player of the Month.
That's right. This is going to be our first ever Player of the Month, primarily for actions that were done in the month of March. So we're awarding this for March, and then at the beginning of the next month, we'll do the one for April. So this is to again be clear for what we're doing here is we're wanting to honor someone who has made an impact on the game beyond themselves, but it doesn't necessarily have to be competitive results. That's what we have the power rankings for, to honor the ones that are having competitive success. But we also wanted to have something where we could, give a shout out to someone that has gone above and beyond to enrich the game,
make an impact
for other people, not just themselves. So the first ever Player of the Month, and I believe, what did we say? They can't win it for 3 months?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we
3
said
months.
or something? So you got a 3-month layover. You can't win it again. But you want to go ahead and tell them who has won the first ever Player of the Month?
I'll tell him who. He is the organizer of the Kentucky State Tournament. He is the champion of booster packs. He is the sensei for the Kentucky Play Group. He is the... What else is he? What else is he? He's amazing. That's what he is. His name is Brian Jones, Booster Jones, former Mr. Classic.
Booster Seal Jones the third. Yes, so we wanted to give this to Brian because of the work that he did, not just organizing the tournament there, but also promoting and pushing for higher, numbers. And it's not all about numbers, but it's about opportunity for the game to be shared among people and also be able to, create the camaraderie that the community is known for by having, a place for that kind of interaction to happen. And obviously everyone that host tournaments have that same opportunity to promote and things. And we're hoping that this is an inspiration to them to push for whatever the next level of their tournament. Maybe you average, 8 to 10 people. Well, maybe 12 to 14 is the next step, and you can push towards that. But for 3 years running, I believe it is. And this isn't, a cumulative award for the last 3 years, but just talking about the work that he has done 3 years over, that this is the biggest tournament outside of nationals. And it probably gives us the most true representation of what a competitive field is going to look like over the course of several rounds, like at nationals. So I think we were in full agreement here that we wanted to honor Brian for promoting and pushing his tournament and, creating something big for us, similar to, like almost like a baby nationals. A mini nationals. Yeah. Also, and I do want to stress this because I know that he would do it as well. If this was an award and we presented it to him and he came up in front of the audience and he had to give his thank you and his speeches, I know that he would direct a huge thank you to Chris Fashman. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the assist out there for him.
Nice.
That Chris Fashman also for his help in hosting and doing some of the legwork for the tournament as well, running and keeping up with scores throughout. I know that he would give him a shout out in his acceptance speech if this was such a thing. So I also wanted to, just highlight Chris and his willingness and effort to help put on such a big tournament, because it doesn't happen by one person alone. Brian can go out and do all the, pushing and advertising and do a lot of it, but it does take some other people to fill in some of the gaps. So it's not just a one person thing, but we do want to honor Brian for, heading up that effort. So he is our first ever player of the month. Going to get 2 random booster packs from our friends over at Your Turn Games. Always love that they're willing to give back to the community. And who knows, with Booster Jones's luck, he's probably going to pull 2 ultra rares out of that. Probably a foil. Who knows? He's got the pack opening magic. Yeah. So we'll just have to say, Brian, you have to let us know after you get these packs from our friends over at Your Turn Games. You got to let us know if you open any ultra rares. Yeah. So we can start building up the lore of Booster Jones as we head towards nationals again. Because I feel like some of that has died off a little bit, but he's always right there. He can always turn the switch back on. So that's going to bring us to one other thing before we get into a different segment for the podcast here. But this is going to bring us to something new that we did previously and we mentioned on the last recording. Yeah, we'll just jump right into it. This is kind of your brainchild, but we'll kind of go over some of the recent results that we had from it.
In collaboration with the Z Temple Discord, we now turn our attention to the Meta Forecast to see where the top decks rank based on voting from the players themselves.
So, still at the top in number 1, we have Joshua Thieves taking a slight dip. It started last month in 9.8, went down to 9.36. So we're seeing that some of the, the group consensus has gone from Joshua Thieves being the absolute top, but it still is on average the top deck in people's minds. So Joshua Thieves still at the top there. Followed in second again, but maintaining number 2 spot, we have Nativity Herods falling from 9.1 to 8.67, but still maintaining that number 2. And another consistent piece here, a Clay Black and Gray, going from 8.6 to 8.54, basically the same rating this month. So that is something that's really cool here. So we have some other declines here. We have Joshua Gray Black declining just 0.1, going from 8.4 to 8.39. Minor dips, same rank. Clay CTB, which took another drop here from 7.83 to 7.25, dropping from 6th place to 10th place. Jay's Genesis also dropped from 9th to 11th, from going from 7.1 to 6.63. And a new category here for rank 7, we have Big Clay at 7.58 taking up for rank 7. And this is before Tim's big results of this. So when we get our April forecast out soon, we might see Big Clay take some spots up here. I told you I thought it was going to be over 8, and it ranked underneath 8, so 8 points. So we could see better on that. Here's another one I expect to do better this month too. We have Posty Joshua, also known as Banishing Act from Jaden himself. That's at number 9 with 7.29, and I expect that to jump as well. This deck is very powerful, and one of the things I think that's interesting about this deck is it has an ability to kind of siphon off the offense of the Joshua decks, because he can ban to Joshua decks in ways Joshua decks can't ban to his offense, and because he can siphon off that power, it gives him the ability to play in a little bit different way than you would normally play with Joshua decks. So he can siphon off the Joshua deck's strength, but he has a really interesting defense that Joshua doesn't tend to actually work with, because when you're stealing Edomite cards, the Edomite cards don't tend to work for your defense. Like, you're not stealing unsuccessful. You're not stealing cards that would let you just play them immediately and use them. Like, you're stealing cards that banish other cards, and like, well, I don't banish cards. Like, this doesn't help my defense at all. So I think it's really interesting. We'll see how this matchup plays out, but that's really cool. Some other bottom tier results here. We have Green Soulhide staying at the bottom, went from 6.6 to 6.36, and Meek White obviously didn't appear in this list. But overall, it was a really cool meta forecast. It's good to see what people are thinking about, and I've been enjoying this. Did I miss anything? I don't think I missed anything here.
I think you hit most things. I do want to just kind of open this little segment up and not just give the results here, but have a little bit of a discussion, because we created, well, I mean, this is your brainchild. You created this, and, with collaboration from Z Temple, and that's where players can vote on this list. We have a group of, dedicated people to help come up with the 12 decks that are going to be enlisted or provided as options for voting. And then we have this huge state tournament at Kentucky State. And again, I'm not trying to belittle any other state tournament. I just know that there was a lot of data that was made available and accessible at the Kentucky State tournament. So you can see the deck list. They are on the Land of Redemption. You can go and read those and look at those. I don't think it was all of them, but I think it was most of them. Shout out to Tim again. We mentioned him always wanting to, even though he's having competitive success, always willing to give back to the game. For him, can you imagine, dude? Because I know that I filled out I'd ended up not playing, but I know that my handwriting wrote down my deck list. And I'm just thinking about the hours that he must have spent trying to read people's handwriting and then compiling all of that data in a neat, easy to see version. And I believe you can just click and boom, bring it into Lackey, and there it is. So definitely thank him for making all of that information and data accessible. But so we wanted to create this as a tool so that you can kind of have an idea of what you expect to see across a meta tournament. And so we had one of those with the Kentucky State tournament. Was there any surprises for, kind of, obviously I know that we didn't have Genesis and Herods on here, for example, but I feel like a lot of what we saw was kind of, the truth was available in this meta forecast. If you look at it, like all of the Joshua being everywhere, and then some of the pairings for offenses and defenses, but just how well do you think that this represented kind of what to expect once you get to see what Kentucky offered?
Yeah, I think this did a really good job overall, as far as you can go with this type of situation. One thing we know for sure is that our community has a lot more players that want to blaze their own path, and they don't necessarily want to just pick the same deck that everybody's playing. So like, you're going to run into people that are like, oh, I want to play blue and I want to play something else. I don't want to be like Joshua Thieves. I don't want to be like Clay Herods. I want to be something special. So like pairing blue and Herods, that's something special. That's something different. And like, I don't think you're ever going to find a list that's fully going to encapsulate all of the Redemption meta, because there's always a lot of good players that want to like branch out and do their own thing. Like you have Jaden, who's like, oh, what if we took Joshua in a different way? What if we pushed aside Promised Land, we went for some of these posty cards? Like, you're going to find a lot of players who want to branch out in their own direction. So it's very hard to pin down the Redemption metagame. But as far as like this, I think we got a really good job here. I think if you play LGP, you're going to run into a lot of these decks. And I think that as far as grouping this into a list, that's as good as you're going to get. You can't we can't we can't talk to everybody at the same time. I need Professor X with his what's it called, the helmet and everything, to find everybody at all their decks at once to get a good list. But I think we got a good one here, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, or you need like Doctor Strange to look into the future and see what is actually played, so he can come back and give you
then twist it back.
Analysis and data.
He's gonna bargain with me. So
yeah,
it's gonna be good.
I definitely think that being able to see this kind of on the forefront of a tournament like Kentucky State, and then be able to see the data behind it, and then get to have both of those to compare, it kind of lets you know as a player how much you can actually glean from this and rely on the information found in this. Again, it's not going to be fully, encompassing for everything. It's not going to account for, the creative mind that wants to put a different pairing that we haven't seen, consistently before. So there's going to be variants that are, and variant deck lists that fall outside of the range of what this is trying to do, but it gives you a snapshot of kind of the 75 to 80% heart of tournament decks that you can expect that you're going to run into, especially if you're pushing toward the top tables and trying to compete for winning and placing at some of these tournaments. And I think it did pretty well for that. I am interested to see how it evolves now, because we've seen it for 2 months now. We're going into the third month. And again, this is something that the list will be put out on the Z Temple Discord. If you're not in the Z Temple Discord, then you can reach out to someone and we can get you access to that. The only thing that is asked with that is for the information that you are taking and you are getting from other players, you're willing to share as you can. And that doesn't mean, like, some players they may not feel comfortable in their own ability to analyze and build decks and things, but just be part of the conversation or offer some thoughts and ideas. And then it helps just continue to round out ideas and things. And part of the way that you can help with that is, if you don't feel super confident in your ability to offer unique thoughts and ideas on decks and things, you can at least log in and or get on and vote when this comes out. And then that helps everyone out just by giving your thoughts based on your localized meta, because we have different play groups in different pockets of the country. And the play group meta for any individual play group can be vastly different than what the overall meta is. So having someone represent all of those different ideals that might be represented in their local play group in a list like this can help kind of, answer some of the variance among, different locations within the country. Anyway, I digress. I think it's a great tool, and I'm interested to see how it, the third month goes through. So if you can, make sure you are able to participate, or if you are willing and able to participate, make sure you keep up with that so that you know when it goes and it's provided. Maybe eventually we can get it hammered down to where we have a consistent day of the month that it goes live, or, around that, so that it can be more of a, a repeatable pattern of this is when we're voting and things. But I did want to ask you, and I know that some other curious minds want to know, but how much do you think Prince of the Air is going to impact the current meta, and how do you think it's going to shift some of the decks within this meta forecast? Do you think we're going to see different pairings with demons or demon thieves now because of that? How much of a difference do you think it's going to make?
Prince of the Air is good enough that it should impact the game in a major way. The only issue I have with Prince of the Air is that Orange just has very weak enhancements and not a ton of actually strong demons that back it up. Like there's a few really good demons, but if you're trying to play mono orange, if you're trying to play demon thieves, if you're trying to play demons with something else, you kind of run out of like I need something else right here, and you don't have it a lot of times. Like you're looking at playing Trembling Demon or Worshipping Demons or something like that, and those are okay cards, but you're like, I want something else. So man, if they ever release a set with some really good demon support, you could see Prince of the Air.
Prince of the Air is the new one. Prince of this world was the GOC.
Currently, I expected to see some play. I just think it may take some time to find an actual good home for it, because Demon Thieves plays differently than Thieves for sure, and that could be the right home for it. It could be mono orange. I've seen it played a few different ways. It's a really strong card, especially with Judean mediums. We're just going to have to see, though. Like, it's a card that's going to be on the radar for a long time, because any set that releases with more orange cards is immediately going to increase the value of Thieves. But yeah, like for now, I expected to see play as people try to shoehorn it in their decks, and it may not be the right way to do it, but it's so powerful, people are going to try to play it no matter what. So that's what I'm thinking about for that.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll be tested pretty widely. And then I think at that point you're going to see some people stick with it, and then a lot of people realize it's more of a nuanced card than it looks like at face value. I think 100%, if this was a human, then it would be in just about every deck, because you can go Deceiver to it, Amalekite Slave, things like that. But there's not a lot of easy ways to just throw this in your deck and then have a quick way to it. You can't use Golgotha to go get it because it's not gospel. And then if you're wanting to get, you mentioned having Judean mediums, be able to go get Judean mediums and then Bandit this to make it CBN. That's a really cool play, but it takes a little bit of setup because you have to almost organically get to these cards and piece them together. You can go Deceiver into Judean mediums, but you don't know for a fact that you're going to have access to the demon that you want to make CBN at the time. So it makes it tricky. It's tricky. And then you also, some of the best things for demons, Judean mediums, and you don't have to worry about as much if you're willing to use one of your underdeck abilities on Prince of the Air to, underdeck Judean mediums. But if you're playing like Fallen Star, you want to maintain that orange unity. Stuff like that. And then you want to potentially do Sheol as well. That's another, fortress that you can play out. And you have Add to Battle, but again, it has to have unity, sharing a brigade, which Judean mediums kind of throws that off. I don't really know where it's going to land.
This card is so strong. Yeah.
I do think it's really cool that it's a highly sought after chase card. Like, I think there's already probably tons of demand before the card is even made available because we haven't had the first regional tournament. I think it's also cool that last year we got the Judean mediums, so that, I haven't talked about it yet on this podcast, but we're working on getting a play group started with some young kids here locally, but also my buddy Eric over in Mississippi with some kids. And I think being able to get Judean mediums and this card for kids when they show up at a regional tournament, boom, boom. It's kind of cool that both of them go together and they work well. So that's kind of cool. But I think like the demand for it is kind of, it's really pretty crazy up there compared to recent state and regional promos. I don't want it to be like a knock on other promos, but I almost wish that this was kind of the idea moving forward, is that the card would be so highly sought after early on that there would be a little bit of a chase element before you have your regional. You might want to get access to it and then create a little bit of buzz and a market for it. But I'm not real sure how to read the competitive implications until we actually get to it. Like, it's been available in the Lackey Grand Prix, so you've been able to play with it, but I just don't know how many people actually have. And if they have they seen the results that they, wanted to have? So it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of one of those uncertain things that it's going to be fun to actually kind of fill out as we move forward into, the deeper tournament season.
Oh, and just to mention, I missed two of these on here. We also had, it was See the Trees, Soul Surfer and Purple Heart at ranking at 6th and 8th, respectively. 7.79 for Soul Surfer and 7.54 for Purple Heart. Those are also on the March forecast as well that I didn't get to in my summary.
I will say Purple Heart does have Prince of the Air. But I tried Purple Heart for a little while, and me and Chad have gone back and forth on it, and I don't know that should be on the list moving forward.
You got Purple Heartburn?
I just like it's so hard to build your deck in a way to take advantage of getting Nazareth down early, and then if they have an answer,
then you're like,
your deck is built.
Yeah.
It's almost like a glass cannon in the sense that you've built your deck to try to be around that. And if they have a quick answer, like they have woes in hand, you're just like, that's just a bad game for you. Nazareth is one of those things that it's probably best used for once you create a disparity in card advantage. So you're out, you boat raced them a little bit. You can pull it out of your reserve and then throttle the game down so it limits their comeback potential. I don't know how well it is being the first big thing to come out. Like, okay, I'm going to be able to use the Starstruck, package to go and get Crowd's Choice, to get Resurrection, to play it on your turn, to start off.
And it can backfire too. Like if they negate it with like a temporary negate, and they place their own protect down, and then it's just restricting yours.
But you're
exactly,
not.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, goodness.
I don't know. You mentioned that one, and it just gave me a little bit of nightmares from some of the games that I played with it. But anyway, I wanted to definitely talk about the meta forecast here, but we'll transition and talk about the deck that we're going to be spotlighting here.
This week's Deck of the Week is presented by Your Turn Games. Join us as we take a deeper look at a deck that has sparked our interest and spotlight the mind behind it.
All right, so I said we would talk about this a little bit later in the podcast. So we're here. We're at the point. We don't have the creator of the deck on this time. I believe the deck is out there enough that people can go and find out the ins and outs of the deck. So we don't have to go over that. But I thought it would be cool to kind of just branch out and have more of a philosophical discussion about it, because I feel like it's a lightning bolt in the community right now. And we're talking about, yes, Big Clay, the deck that found itself playing against itself in a mirror match at the top tables in the last round of the Kentucky State tournament. Brian lost that 5-1 to Tim, who went on to win, getting 14 of a possible 15 points across the 5 rounds. So the deck did really well in the field. I would even say that with Brian piloting it and being right there at the end, that by all accounts and measures, it was fantastically represented at the Kentucky State tournament. There was 2 decks possible. Like there was only 2 people playing it, and they found themselves at the top table at the end. But this is a 100-card deck, so you get double the dominance. You get double some of the characters, so you get double Resurrection Revealer. You get double the Ascension play if you want to do that.
Untouchable.
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of Glory.
Yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Yes.
4-drop coin.
Yeah, potentially double 4-drop McCoy. A lot of cool things that can be included in the deck list. And then you saw a little bit of variance. But I definitely, before we get into talking about it, I want to shout out the fact that, again, Tim has put a video out, chronicling some of his experience at the Kentucky State tournament. And he kind of breaks down game by game how his Type 1 experience went with Big Clay. So you can go and see that. And I think probably the most telling game is the one where Peter played him, and I believe it ended up being 4-3 as the final score. But I was walking around and judging. I ended up not playing because Brian was going to drop because there was an odd number, and I knew I would get to play at another state, and he wouldn't. And I wanted him to have the opportunity to shoot for the R&RS points. So I chose to, offer to help judge and let him play. So in doing that, I got to walk around and see a lot of the gameplay as it was happening, and it was pretty fun being on that side of it because it was the first time at a sizable event that I've been involved from that perspective. But I saw like 2 or 3 turns where it looked like Big Clay had no answer. There was like 1 card in his territory. I saw his hand and it was kind of log jammed. There wasn't a lot of firepower in the moment, but the deck was able to withstand that. And that's the thing. Even when it gets into one of those tricky spots, it just has enough backbone and enough ability to overcome that it can withstand a lot of onslaught from another deck and still be able to pull other resources because it's doubling up on some of that stuff. But I know that there's a consensus out there, and this is headed up by a lot of veteran players. I won't call anyone by name, but I believe there's some outspoken veteran players that would say that 100-card decks just do not work, or they create the potential for variance that basically you want your games to play out as consistently to the way that, the ideal scenario over and over and be a repeatable pattern. You talked about this last year. You want to eliminate some of the varied results you can get. And a lot of, veteran players would say that a 100-card deck presents too much of that to really be formidable. So early question is just, what are your initial thoughts on 100-card deck, and especially like this one?
Yeah. A few months ago, I was actually bringing this up, and I was saying, I asked the question, what would happen if the Redemption community was flooded with very motivated professional players from
Magic the Gathering players.
From other games like Magic the Gathering, and they had a chance, and they got a ton of play testing in. Here's the thing about Redemption: like, we have a ton of smart players, but a lot of, like, specifically because we are a game focused on Christianity. One of the concepts that we follow as Christians is that we do not make this game an idol. So hopefully we're not making this game an idol. Hopefully we're not devoting all of our lives to this game. So we just don't have all the time in the world to fully suss through every type of deck that could be out there. But if you bring in a giant community that with players that are professionals that could just spend their whole weeks building these decks and finding them, would they find out that maybe 100 card is the way to go? And the reason why I say that is, yes, 100 card decks do increase the variance that you have in your opening hands and getting some clunky hands. Oh, I drew 2 of the same artifact. That's not useful. I drew 2 of the same character. I can't use that. But it also comes with its own benefits, right? It comes with a deeper dominant pool. It comes with so many cards that you literally cannot run out of gas in the time limit. Like, there's no game where you're judging of Tim where he's going to actually be out of cards in his deck. I run out of cards in my deck all the time. Like, Josh with Thieves, you can actually get to the point where you make your 4th rescue and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make my 5th rescue. Like, they put up a stiff defense. I barely got through for these 4. I don't know how I'm going to make the 5th rescue. It's probably going to be a partial win. This deck does not run out of gas. It has gas the entire way to go. Like, you can't mill this deck out. You can't run this deck out of gas. So you have to consider that is a bonus too. And I'm not fully sold on 100 card decks yet, but I've always said, like, I think it could be a real thing here. Like, it is a deck that has extreme stamina. It is a deck that has a lot of different options. Like, most decks can't afford to play Harvest Time in it, but this deck can, and that gives you a different type of option. When you have a card like Crowd's Choice, when you have a card like Second Coming that can grab any sort of dominant, it changes the math on consistency. Like, he loses consistency in his open 8, but his Crowd's Choice has more targets, right? His Spirit as a Dove has more targets, and because of that, he also has more answers. So yes, you throw in a negative point there for his opening hands being weird sometimes and drawing multiples of the same card, but you also throw in a huge check mark for the fact that, oh, I have 4 different types of forts to grab. I have all these different types of cards. Like, it's hard to account for every single way that he can attack you in a deck that has all these different types of cards, right? And that's the cool thing about this deck, right? It can play dominance like Led Astray, which I would tell anybody in a 50 card deck, never play that card, because if you run into a meek offense, that card is purely dead. But he can kind of afford to play it, because if he's running into a meek offense, he still has other cards to play with. Now that card might be dead in that scenario, but like, he can Crowd's Choice for a different card. He can pick up a different card. So 100 card decks are an area that needs to be explored more. I think it is wrong to just dismiss it out of hand. And I'm not saying other people have dismissed it out of hand. Like, they have good reasons, but I think we need to put more thought into it. I'm not saying it's the best right now. And I'm not saying I think it's going to win Nationals necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did win Nationals, or at least made half the top 8 or something. Like, it's proven that there's good reasons to play 100 card decks. You just got to make it extra. Like, you have to pour all the consistency in it you can, because 100 dark card decks have a wobbly foundation on consistency. Does that make sense?
Yep. I think for the power band to be higher, not to go super nerd or talk about cars a little bit, but it's like, you take this engine and you put bigger supercharger on it, or this bigger turbo and things, you increase the power band, but then the more you do to push the power limit of this car, it's almost like a scale, a sliding scale. The higher the power goes, the lower the reliability goes, like the day-to-day, like daily driver reliability. So the car is never more reliable than it is. I wouldn't say from the factory, but like after you make, there's a few upgrades and modifications you can do to help with the reliability, but then there's a certain point to where to get that power, you're sacrificing something. And I think that's what a 100 card deck does, to get the extra power and the ability to overcome things by doubling up on some cards, and to get the 14 dominance that it has access to. The reliability in this case would be the consistency. So it slides down a little bit. So as you increase the power level, I would say that's probably how my mind works the analogy.
Like I was saying before, like, he can kind of make up for some of that variance with his tons of searching. Redemption has good search effects, so you can search these cards out, and you can reduce, like, yes, you have the extra spike of variance when you draw your opening 8, but every time you get to play a search card, every time you get to pick a specific card out of your deck, the variance is overcome by the new strength of that search card, and that starts overcoming that variance. And the other thing I'll point out is Magic has a similar concept here. There was a card released called it's a companion card called Yorion, and it says you may play this card as your companion if you have 20 more cards than the normal starting size of your deck or something like that. And the point is, Magic decks tend to be 60 card decks. This card forced you to play 80 card decks, which was a no-no. When I was playing Magic, there was like 60 cards always, never 60, never 61, never like, do not play more than 60 cards. And they're like, with this card, the fact that this card becomes a bonus card for you makes it worth playing 80 cards. And what they did is they said, oh, I have enough cards where I can play like similar cards that get me up to 80 cards. And that's what he's doing here. He's playing similar cards that get him up to 100 cards. If you look at his list, there's not a lot of cards that you would want to play in your 50 anyways. So you're like, oh, he's not shoehorning in bad cards just to get up to 100. He's playing cards that you would already play to get to 50. Yes, again, I'll emphasize that he can get double uniques. That's definitely something that can harm him, but he's not playing bad cards here. He's playing tons of search effects. He's playing tons of cards that find him more cards. So this kind of overcomes that variance at the beginning, and we'll see. Time will tell. But I agree. Seth has been championing this for days, being Ling, and I've always tried to like throw my hat in the ring. I didn't do it as well as Babuni did here. I think he's got the best one so far.
I think most people would probably agree with that, especially after his big win at Kentucky State. Having the best version of a 100-card deck and kind of answering some of that. But I think a lot of it also is, we know Tim is one that constantly tinkers and constantly thinks about ways to improve a deck. And he's put a lot of that thought out there in the public space, through the Discord, through Land of Redemption, and through his own, YouTube channel. And so you get to see some of that. And it's not just, here's a 100-card deck, and that's what I'm playing. It's constantly looking at, okay, is this the right thing to have a duplicate of, or should I only have one of this? And constantly challenging his own thought process about it. And I think a lot of that, playing it and being willing to tinker and try to figure out how to make it the best it can be. Not everyone's going to put in that same level of work. So a 100-card deck in other people's hands are not going to have the same level of success. And I think that obviously you can use a lot of the foundation that he's created, like Brian Jones, for example, piloting his own version of Big Clay. And, he had some nuances built in with his, like Herod Agrippa II, so that when he played Led Astray, he was capturing the opponent's offense. And eventually, a couple of plays like that, he could get to a situation to where they just don't have the resources to push back and try to get rescues. Like you were talking about, Joshua Thieves already kind of struggles with looking for that fourth rescue or whatever in a game. And I think this isn't something that's going to start a trend of I can just build any 100-card deck. Like I can't go out and grab Genesis because I like playing Genesis and build a 100-card Genesis deck, because that will never work, because there's just not enough.
Well, I'm not going to say never, but I don't think it would work. Yeah, I agree.
Right now with the current card pool, I think Clay is probably the fastest brigade overall right now.
Yeah.
I think it has more access to strong abilities on a, like the per card power level of Clay right now, I think is higher than any other brigade. I could be wrong. Someone out there could challenge that and say, no, look at this. But I think, I still think that GOC Clay is probably the strongest per card offense that you can put together. And he's capitalizing on that. And then he's also finding ways to mitigate the liability issues on, having defense and having access to, be able to run the Meek Soul package. And I think that's where a lot of this is going to come in, is there's not a lot of players that are conditioned to give up the ability and consistency that Souls provide just for the raw speed. And then when they play your first on a star ability to start the game and it doesn't work, and then they play Son of God and rescue it so that it never works after that, you can't just, get it back on top of the deck or something later on with an ability. You get to a point to where, okay, you've lost that draw engine. I don't know how well other players are equipped to pivot and work off of that negative equity from the start of the game, like we saw him be able to do in at least one of those games at Kentucky State. So I know we're we're spotlighting this deck for Deck of the Week, and we're talking a little bit more in depth than we normally do for a deck, but that's because you can go and check out the deck and see it, and we want to push you back to Tim's channel and on Land of Redemption and things so that you go and, support his content in order to gain the more intimate knowledge of the deck list and things. Load it up in Lackey, do a couple of test hands with it, and just, I think just doing a few test hands, you will agree that, it takes a special player to be able to take some of those clunky hands and then get out from under it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when it comes to Nationals, where you're on the clock, and you were put on the clock last year, and I think you made a couple of nervous plays, or you,
it's hard to play on the clock.
Yes. Especially in Top Cut, where it's like a constant clock, like they're, all right, come on, make you play. So I'll ask you, I know that I think Tim could do it at Nationals, but how many players in our current pool of known commodities for players do you think actually would have a shot playing a 100-card deck and not having time issues from their own side? Now, obviously, playing against someone can slow play you, and especially when you have a 100-card deck, they're already going to be on edge because it's this is a new thing. They're not commonly facing 100-card decks.
Yeah.
But how many players do you think could adequately play that at Nationals?
I think if you forced it in the hands of everybody and you gave it to them, they kind of played it new, you probably only have a handful, maybe 4 or 5 that could do it right now. But I imagine if you gave people a few weeks of this deck, a month of this deck, and they were actually playing it and getting used to it, you could probably have them playing at a good clip, not perfectly, but at a good clip, at enough time to finish games. At least I think finish enough games to be in contention. Maybe not. Maybe they would lose some games to timeouts, but if you know the deck and you know your lines of play, it's not that crazy. Because you're playing duplicates in here, you're not running an insanely amount of unique cards. I don't know what the count is, but considering if you reduce the duplicate count by 1, you're probably playing 60. In fact, your souls are all meek or first or unsuccessful. So
undesirables.
Undesirables. So that changes. You reduce the amount of thought required in a lot of areas. And that's one of the things that Tim said is that sometimes it's harder to play with his deck, but also you get some easy blocks burial block, led astray block, and those blocks are a lot easier than thinking about I need to make sure I get through their prevent, and I need to make sure that I negate their dominant restriction. If you get some easy blocks in there, it really takes off the mental load of playing a deck like this. So he's filled his deck with a lot of easy blocks and a lot of really strong attacks that are really hard for opponents to deal with. So I wouldn't be surprised if you could have 30, 40 players playing this. I'm not saying this is Nationals, but I'm saying if you train them, they could play it well. So I don't think this is out of the reach of any player that I think that is good enough to take a game off of any other player at LGP. They could play this deck, I think, if they trained on it.
Interesting. So again, I think 100-card decks, and we won't continue to beat the dead horse here. We're going to get to see this, I believe, based on the results at Kentucky State. I would think that with the curious mind that Tim has when he goes, because I believe he's planning on going to Northwest Regionals, which is coming up, I would venture to say that the curious mind that he has, he's almost forced to play this to see how well it does in that field as well. So it's 2 different areas of the country, 2 different potential play styles from play groups, and see how he does there. And then, if he does well there, let's just say he wins that, it almost begs him to play it at Nationals, right? Even if he's still on the fence, it's almost I've came this far with it. I might as well just try it, right? And the thing this year, though, is that you can't check multiple decks at Nationals. So if he decides it's Big Clay, it's Big Clay no matter what. You can't, 2 rounds in be okay, I'm just going to go back to a 50-card deck because of the mental, thought, the mental bandwidth it requires to pilot this deck. So I think that will lean into the final decision of whether to play it at Nationals or not. I'm hoping that we get to see it because I love seeing people challenge kind of the status quo on thoughts and push the boundary a little bit and think outside of the box. And I think getting to see what it would do at Nationals in the hands of someone who is, one of the best active players at the moment would be cool to see, just from a outside spectator perspective, not necessarily if I was him and I was trying to win and defend my title and try to win it 2 years in a row, is that the best thing I can do at nationals? I'm not sure, and that's the decision he'll have to make, but just from someone on the outside, I would love to see him try to do it with Big Clay if it continues to have a success at in-person tournaments as he moves forward. I know I think the only other one he's going to is the Northwest Regionals. So if it does well there, it kind of makes you think. But I believe that a lot of this, and talking about 100-card decks, it just comes back to the main point, and it's kind of like having to play under pressure, under the clock. Last year at Nationals for you, it happened a little bit to me in a couple of spots, but I feel like more so for me, it's usually I won't hey, I don't want to be that guy, but can you make him hurry up on the other side or whatever? But it comes back down to your intimate knowledge of your own deck and knowing your lines of play. And I think there's a lot of times where we waste a lot of time thinking about the potential outcome of an interaction versus just going ahead and going with it. And I think if you would just go with it and make the play and force the opponent to play at a higher tempo than what they're normally doing, you gain some advantage in that. And I think a little bit of that comes out with Tim with Big Clay, even though it's a 100-card deck. He knows it so well. Like when he's searching and he's sliding the cards on the backside, all right, I'm going to grab that, and boom, boom, boom. And he does 2 or 3 things, and the opponent then has to, maintain that high pace of play. So a lot of it comes back to knowing your deck and how well you know your deck. And so pigeonholing off of this, getting away from Tim, but just if you want to do well at Nationals, we say it every year leading up to Nationals, so I'll go ahead and say it here. What did we say, 109 days away from Nationals? Know your deck inside and out. Don't build it the night before. Hey, I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to have my deck built beforehand. I did that. I had it built beforehand last year, and I didn't have to think about it as I played it. And I ended up playing your newspaper, so I stuck with the black gray on the nativity. But just knowing your deck takes a lot of the stress off. So for Tim, he's got to make that decision. But for everyone else, the way that you can prepare for Nationals and kind of use the process that Tim's going through to try to, learn this 100-card deck and know the lines of play inside and out and speed up and be able to cut the corners on his, time it takes to play the deck. Think about the concepts he's doing and then apply it to your own deck, like quick block opportunities, quick rescue opportunities, things that will allow you to put the pressure on your opponent to match your own tempo.
Yep.
So even if you're not going to play a 100-card deck, there's things to learn from the process that Tim is putting out there in the public space for us to look and glean and take information from. So I guess, thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Let's go.
We'll get ready to move on to our next segment here.
And now, join us as we head into the design lab and brainstorm new card ideas with this week's Ager the Creator.
It's Ager the Creator. So you've got the cards, and I've got, I don't know, reactions, I guess. Heartburn.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just hit me with some designs.
So I got 3 concepts here for you today. Two cards and a group of cards. So the first one I'm going for is a thought of like someone's like, hey, like what do we do to get some more fighting with Soulhide? Because Soulhide is a strategy that's very frustrating. It can be very powerful. I don't
especially
love it
in teams.
Exactly. I don't love it just on it does not fit my style of play type thing. Like I like to have lots of lost souls with abilities, and I want them in play, and I want them negating their characters in territory. I want them giving me cards. I want them doing all those sorts of things. But it's clear that Soulhide is a strong concept. So how do we fight that? You can generate tokens, but like if you generate tokens and stuff and you give them Hopper and they might just bury them anyways with the burial, etc. So what is another way that you can fight some Soulhide? So this concept is a lost soul called Slaver. And the ability is very simple. Once each round you may capture
It's an awesome name.
Yeah.
Awesome name.
You may capture a character from your territory to a player. So this one is really cool in the fact that this is a really interesting way to fight Soulhide. Oftentimes, they're going to play a card like Murderous. I forgot the black gray enhancement that discard your Pharisee to underdeck all your meek souls type thing. Like they're gonna play a card that, what is it?
Is it just a hireling?
Yeah, just a hireling. So they're gonna do that. They're gonna do Death in the Unrighteous. They're gonna do something like that. Swine Stampede, and they're gonna be okay. Like I got no souls, and you don't have it. You can't play any enhancements. So I hope you have a Harvest Time. And like I don't have a Harvest Time. So if you don't have a Star of Bethlehem to play a soul from a star, like what are you gonna do? Well, here's Lost Soul Slaver. Because you can capture a character at any time from your territory to a player, that means you can capture over a hero, you can capture over an evil character.
So after they enable their hide mechanic, I'm just going to capture, and now you've got no blocker. I got you.
So they need to have another, like a dominant or something to hide because they don't have a character anymore. They've already gotten rid of their character. So this is a really cool way to fight that. Another cool thing this does is this will let you ditch fools. So like, you gave me this fool, but how about you take that as a lost soul instead? Like, how about you get rid of that? Oh, you gave me this possessing spirit. How about we put that in your territory as a captured demon rather than
okay? I'm liking this.
This has some really cool implications. Obviously, it's pretty fair in the sense of like if they haven't given you anything, you're gonna have to capture something that you have over there. So it is
Stalks
fair in the sense of like, yeah.
I'm going to exchange, and then I'm going to give you your stuff. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, no one's playing Stalks of Flax, but if this is enough to play it for you, that's good. That's good for me.
It's not, but
exactly. What is it? You can play Remnant Soul to take a character from their territory, and then
here's my thing. My one thing about your card is I think this should be the first soul with a CBI modifier.
Yeah.
Because if I'm giving up one of my own resources. And it's to counteract, and they can already do Son of God, and the ability goes away, like it doesn't negate it, but it stops me because I can't trigger it because it's no longer in play. There's a lot of answers. I think what this is trying to answer, you don't want that to just be wiped out by a blanket negate neutral character that people are already running. And I believe at a certain point we need to find the ability that's worth modifying on a lost soul. And I could see this being that because it doesn't do me any good to capture my own character and put it in there unless it's in the matchup where they don't have souls. And we always want to have answers to Soul Drought as a game because it creates a potential negative play experience. So I would be on board with let's just, if we're throwing out crazy ideas, let's just crazy Lost Soul Slaver, ultra rare, and at CBI.
Interesting. I don't know if they'll buy that because they've been very clear, like they want Son of God to be able to undo anything a soul can do. But
yeah, I guess
like if it's CBN, CBI, like honestly, like if you're gonna give it CBI, I might as well just give it CBN. Like we don't want it. Like it'd be weird that it got prevented and it never works again. So I think maybe if you want to give it CBN, sure, like maybe. But the point is,
we'll have to get Tyler on the horn and figure out if that's an option.
So that generally covers the concept here. It's not complex, but it has its own branches of play patterns here, and the fact that I can get rid of fools and stuff that people put on your territory on purpose is something I love. I love the card Great White Throne. I don't really get to play it because it's almost always my 51st, 52nd card, and I'm not playing 57 cards, so I'm cutting it. And I'm like, man, like one of the great things about Great White Throne is you get to discard evil cards in your territory that you don't want, and I like this as it has its sort of feeling too, but the main purpose of it is to be able to generate souls at a moment's notice. So
I also really like the idea that it can at a moment's notice give you a quote unquote Meatlaw soul because it can capture a character to yourself so that you can enable a modifier or something based on an ability based on controlling a Meatlaw soul at the drop of a hat. Too. So you could use like, what is it? Surreptitious scheme.
Yeah.
It can, or you can go to deck if you control a Meatlaw soul. There's a couple of abilities that cannot be negated.
CBP.
Or CBP. If you control a Meatlaw soul. So that I feel like there's uses, but I don't think that if it's always on and always works, I don't see where it would negatively skew the game. But I could see it not getting played if there was a chance that, oh, well, it's just going to be negated. I'm never really going to get the impact because I'm sitting there waiting for an event to trigger. And before that event triggers or the time that I need to use it, they're going to have an answer. So I could see that.
Yeah.
So I would think something like that. It would be cool to have a modifier on it. Or you could make it a territory class character that cannot be interrupted, kind of like Priest of Zeus. So it comes down at CBI, you put it in play with darkness, and then once per round you could capture a character in your territory to a player, and it could just be some generic name, Slaver. That'd be kind of cool.
I like that. Sounds really cool.
Maybe you should probably definitely make that a unique character somehow. So people like Tim don't play 2 copies in territory at the same time.
Exactly.
But anyway, what else you got?
Okay, so this one's interesting. I didn't get a lot of feedback on this one, but I thought it was interesting. So I'm calling this one Venom of Asps. It's a 6/1 evil enhancement, which is already weird. It kind of changes the normal state of evil enhancements usually being totaling to 6. Maybe I'll change it to 6/0. But it's gray, and it just says negate a card. You may change the stats of all evil cards in battles to 12/1 to end the battle. So what we have here is really awkward. It's interesting. It's awkward. This is going to be a soul for them, but maybe you end the battle and rip up their giant band. Like, say you have three evil cards in battle. You negate their battle winner. You go up to 36-3, mutual destruction, and now you've shredded their whole offense. Like, it's interesting because you're giving up the battle, most likely, because there's almost no way that they're not going to have more than like 3 or 4 attack. But it's a battle ender that can just be like, okay, I'm sacrificing all the guys I have in my right. Like, I banded in 3 evil characters and I played Venom of Asps to stop your special initiative card, but I'm guaranteed to get all of the heroes that you have in. So there's a huge band in from Nativity, huge band in from Joshua, huge band in from Daniel. You play this. You get in, and your characters all mutually destruct, and you get to take them out. Obviously, if you also protect your soul somehow before this, and then you do this, they don't even get the soul afterwards, right? Like,
but if they have Slaver, and they can add one that's not already protect.
No, they get protected again.
Yeah, because it would be blanket, unless it was protect a specific
2 souls. Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out how to layer your card ideas here.
Exactly. But I think this was interesting.
I like the ability to end the battle, not just being a blanket, like unsuccessful, that type of thing, but more of a nuance. Like, you're setting yourself up to potentially give up a soul to wipe out some of their offense, to cripple them for future turns. And I think in the current environment, players can rely on characters a little too much.
Yeah.
Once the character's on the board, it's there for the most part. And it allows, like, I feel like there's a little bit too much consistency with characters, especially heroes. And I think that if you can pull that down a little bit, not to where a character comes on the table and they have to worry about, oh my goodness, it's going to be discarded immediately or something like that, but just a few more removal abilities that trigger. And if you can tweak in the battle abilities with a way to do that, and you're setting yourself up to give up a soul to do that, to gain that benefit, I feel like that's a cool and healthy way to do it in the battle ability. Yeah, I think that's interesting.
I was just looking at a new way to come into the battle because, like you said, like, there's obviously the easy ways. Oh, unsuccessful. Oh, you got fetal position. You got those easy ones. But what if it was a little bit differently? And this is a bit of a kamikaze card. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about it. So that was Venom of Asps. And the last concept is not a specific card. Is I posted this called the characters that play some of the coolest Mono Brigade cards from Redemption's history, and I called them the Mr. cards. So like Mr. Unsuccessful, an evil character 0-12 EE. 0-12 evil character. And it says, while you have initiative, you may discard a gray card from hand to end the battle as a stalemate limit once per game. So this guy is basically like, oh, this guy can play unsuccessful, basically, if he has initiative. And that's why I gave him insane toughness. So, like, if they're on a single hero attack, they're probably getting an initiative, gives them the chance to fight against this guy. But if they send in a huge band and he gets to go in there underneath, he gets to play unsuccessful as himself. I think that's really cool. One thing I've seen in other card games like Magic is they have a lot of characters that can play iconic cards basically by their own ability. So what if characters themselves could play a card like Amazing Faith? What if a character could play Seized by Babylon? It could play Reap the Whirlwind. It could play High Priest Plot. All these iconic cards from the history of Redemption, I think that'd be really cool. Mr. Death and the Unrighteous. While you have initiative, you may discard a pale green card from hand and all evil cards in battle to shuffle Lost Souls. Like, I think that'd be really cool. So that's one thing I had here is characters that play like the enhancements that they're like an enhancement basically.
Okay, I like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I do like it. I feel like I'm a little bit more open-minded to some cool concepts than maybe some people that are in charge of making some decisions, because what you've done, even though it's cool, you have thereby given each of those brigades the chance to play those cards twice in a 50-card deck. So they get their Amazing Faith, but then they have their Amazing Faith character. They have their Unsuccessful, but then they have their Unsuccessful character. And I don't know that we want to allow...
the homogenization.
I don't know if we want to allow them to play it twice.
Yeah. Could be.
Without, there's some cards that you can still play. Like, I think Amazing Faith has a star ability, so you could technically get it back from the discard and play it again.
The Bartimaeus could get it back.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's ways to get some of those back, but they require setup. This just gives you two uses without much requirement, just the cost of whatever brigade enhancement. So I don't know if logistically that's something that they would allow. Yeah. I don't know if logistically is the right word, but I don't know that they want to ingest two versions of those cards in certain brigades. But the concept I dig, and I really like it. I like if you could almost create, like if there was an identifier line that it can't be played in the same deck as Unsuccessful, I think 100% send that bad boy to print. But I think you would run into some issues. So maybe that's something to down the road as the game gets ready to push towards maybe a new rotation to where some of those cards are going to be rotated out. Then you could have characters that harken back to those abilities by their character ability. I do also think that cards like that, and this is where my mind immediately went, is those are well suited for limited categories, because you can use any card to gain that cool ability within the brigade. You don't have to find that card and pair it up with a character. And I think having strong abilities, but also having them balanced to where you have to have initiative to do it and you're pitching a card to do it, I think would be cool. But having some stronger characters in, like booster draft or picking them up in sealed, I think would be cool. So I like so much about the idea. I just don't know if doubling up on some of those abilities is something that the game would be able to adapt to in the current scheme. Yeah. But I think like a long-term idea, I think would be great if like they just put that in their back pocket and thought about it as they move closer towards that next rotation.
That's kind of the concept here with Aggregate the Creator. Like, I don't expect that I don't expect necessarily that any of these cards
we're going to, at some point, we're going to be able to brag and be like, this idea first brought to you on the podcast, Aggregate the Creator, episode 88. Yeah. They took this idea, stuck it in their back pocket, and they pulled it out on the next set. At some point, we're going to get a card that's actually printed in the set, and we're going to be able to be like, yep, you heard it here first on the podcast. So I don't know which one that's going to be. I'd love for it to be Slaver, but either way, I think at some point we're going to get there. So Tyler, Elder Team, help us out. Chris, Gabe, anybody. Do we got to call up Marcus and be like, hey, Marcus, do us a solid and push this ability?
Yeah.
Who do we need to reach out to try to get one of these cards actually crafted into a card? Yeah. But I like so much of the concept of that, because it's like unexplored like design space. But I also think I like it's almost like having a built-in cost for the ability on that character, to where I have to pitch a card to get the ability on the card. Thereby, it's not a cost system, but it almost mimics a cost system. Yeah. So I have to have that enhancement. Reminds me a lot of like Emperor Otho, to where you have to have that certain enhancement in order to enact his ability. And I think the game could do well with some of that, especially if we're in a game environment to where you're not able to rely on the ability to play your enhancements as much. If you can start to use them as fuel to trigger other things, I think would be cool to chase that design space down a little bit and find uses for them other than just playing them.
Agreed. So I want to do one final thing. I think
Okay.
that next episode, I want to talk about at least next Aggro the Creator segment, whenever that's going to be. Hopefully next episode. I want to talk about the Code of Many Colors. So I want to see what the community thinks they should do.
The Code of Many Colors.
Because like,
Are you
we've
just
had
doing
it
that because
before.
it's a blue card? Well, technically, I
It
mean, I
was a
guess
blue
it's
card,
every
right?
card.
It was a multicolor before. I think it got turned into a blue
I think it's
card, I'm not sure.
multicolor, and then it might have been. Was it brown as well?
There's been a few printings of it, but yeah, I think it was. Let me look it up real quick. But yeah, it's been printed before in many ways. Is it multicolored and brown card? It's been a I don't know if it's been a blue card, but it's been a multicolored. Yeah, it's been multicolored hero, generic, a good enhancement, and it's been a brown card before. So I think we could do something different about it. I'm thinking more in the lines of artifact myself, but maybe it's enhancement, maybe it's that. But I would love to see it. And one of the reasons I'd love to see it is it'd be cool if you could find a way for other offenses to play stolen good enhancements, because generally speaking that doesn't happen very often. But maybe Joshua Thieves could use it. Maybe it's too broken for Joshua Thieves, but
maybe you make it a Genesis gets to pair with Thieves to take stuff, but then they can play.
That's what I'm talking about. But anyways, I want to put that out there. If anybody wants to give me some ideas before we go to the next episode, I'd love to hear it. But if you want to post them in Redemption Card Creations, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and just so that it's buried here in the episode, so you don't get it freely. You actually have to listen to the episode to find this little tidbit, this nugget of information. We did have one lead set designer reach out to us and say something about maybe coming on the podcast and talking about the new set. And I refrained from talking about it, but at Kentucky State, there was some play testing going on. I got to see a little bit of some themes and some brigades. I found one character that I really like. Card Game Fanatic, you would love it because he was a silver hero. But I'm not going to tell you any more than that. But we did have Tyler reach out and mention maybe coming on the podcast soon and, going over some of the information for the new set. And I know they've kept it really close to the vest this year, and we don't have hardly any information. We don't know the name of the set. We haven't seen the set icon yet, although some of us have seen it. We don't know the themes that are involved, at least from an official. They've come out and made it public knowledge yet. So
I mean, we know it's going to be Deacons and Heretics because that's the only themes people want to play these days.
You would love that, wouldn't you? That is like your go-to joke about. I'm just glad Genesis is not your joke offense, because I guess it could be.
No, yeah, Genesis has some real power behind it. I know for sure.
Yeah, except for you're trying to kill every banding offense with your card designs. But anyway, hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get some time to record with Tyler and maybe get some information from him and then bring that to you guys and kind of jumpstart the whole spoiler part of the tournament season here and have some idea of what we're looking forward to for the new set that's going to release at Nationals. I do believe that we're good to say that everything seems to be on pace for a Nationals release. I don't think we've had anything that has jeopardized that, at least in my observations from the playtesting that was happening and, poking Chris for some information. I think we're still on pace for that. So rest assured, but hopefully we can get some information and bring it to you and share that with you in the next couple of weeks. So the ball's in your court, Tyler. Now you got to make it happen.
Cool.
I guess we'll move on and get you to the community mailbag before we wrap up this episode.
Now, it's your chance to join the podcast and have your voice heard as we get ready to answer your questions with this week's Community Mailbag.
And now it's time for our favorite guest on the podcast, and that's you, the listener. So we've got a couple of questions here. We've got one of our, I would say he's a repeat customer for sure. We've got Robar in here, and I'll let you ask this question, pose the question, and then we'll try to answer it. But this, again, guys, we never planned this. It's just we have an idea of what we're going to talk about on the podcast. And then a lot of times there's a follow-up or whatever when we pull the questions from the mailbag. A lot of times it just seems like you could almost say we read the question and then try to craft the entire podcast about it to answer the question, but we don't do that. I just want to say that. So you can go ahead and read that first question from Robar.
Awesome. Given the rising popularity of decks like Big Clay, how do you think that the meta might evolve in terms of deck sizes? Are we likely to see a trend toward larger decks, or will the traditional 50-card decks remain dominant? Robar, what do you think?
I don't think 100-card decks are going to ever outpace 50-card decks in popularity. Bold. I think that's safe to say. But my one thing, and I think we've seen it a little bit over the last couple of years, Part-Time Moses, that I like to refer to that deck as, but GoldenEye, I believe is what Justin Alstead titled it, running 57 cards to get the extra dominant. We've seen Jaden be willing to play 57 to get the extra dominant. 50 cards, I think, is still the ideal number. 49 and a hopper is still the best that you can do for consistency. But if we have more decks continue to push the envelope at 57 and at 100 cards, let's just say, I don't think they're going to become overly popular, but as long as they're there, decks that have more potential backbone and more resiliency to things, like, for example, Joshua Thieves right now, they take cards from you, and that's their staying power. They can manipulate your hand, and then they can push through weaker resources that you have, or limited resources you have. Well, if you have more balance built into your deck and you have access to more defense than what a normal deck has at 50 cards, you can offset some of that. And now, granted, you have the 8 cards that you start off with. So if they take that, you're not replenishing those cards immediately. But if they're in your deck and you have more defense in your deck that you can access, the longer the game goes out, the more you can string it out. I think it can give you a little bit more resiliency against a deck like that, or one trying to manipulate your resources. And if we have more decks that are willing to try to capitalize on getting the extra dominant or the extra soul ability, because I think that's important too. Everybody focuses on the extra dominant, but getting an extra soul ability in there can sometimes be pivotal as well, especially if it's one of those that help you set up and get to a different line of, a certain line of play. So I could see 57 card decks becoming, I think we've seen it over the last 2 to 3 seasons, players be willing to try it and play with it. I think the loss of consistency is somewhat being mitigated lately with some of the cards coming out and some of the rule changes. I almost feel like you're not as big of a disadvantage playing 57 as you used to be when you compare it to a 50 card deck. I could see that getting more of a meta share of decks is people willing to play a 57 card version. But I don't think we're in danger of 100 card decks becoming something that we have to contend with on a round by round basis at a tournament. So what do you think?
I disagree in the sense I think that 100 card decks have more power than 57 in that sense. I feel like my favorite is 50, second favorite is 100, and third is 57. And the reason why is because that 100 card deck gives you that ability to move up into double copies of cards, which is actually really important. I feel like at 57 you're like kind of playing a weird game. Like, well, I increase my deck. I increase my variance by going up to this high, but I only got like 5 more real cards and dominant and a soul. Like, well, if you're going to 57, part of me says, like, why not just go all the way to 100? Like, if you're gonna you'll double your cards, you'll get.
If you're gonna drink, why not drive too?
Yeah, exactly. No. No. But the point is, like, if you're going to decrease your variance in that way, you're ruining your chance to get to 3 woes, Son of God, etc. Like, not ruining, but like decreasing. You might as well decrease it to the point where you actually get a huge bonus of double cards on there. And let's be clear, like, some of those double cards, some of those double mono brigade cards are actually huge. Spirit as a Dove, amazing. And there's lots of them in his list that are really potent single brigade cards, Prince of the Air, etc. Like, there's all these options.
That is a great line of thought. It's just, it goes back to what I mentioned before, is not every brigade has the same good card pool that you want to double up on. Like, 100 card blue Genesis deck is not the same as a 57 Genesis deck. Yeah. Like, I feel like 57 in that brigade and that theme is better than 100 card. And I think you have to go brigade by brigade and which one allows you to capitalize on stuff like that. Like, I don't even necessarily think 100 card Joshua deck is like, I just, you know
know
what?
if he could do it.
it would not be the same as a Clay 100 card deck. So Clay is like an outlier to a lot of this. So when your line of thinking, I understand where you're coming from, and I would agree if the card pool for each brigade and theme and deck archetype was the same, but it's not. So if you take Clay and you throw it out and you're talking about every other deck, I would argue that 57 of every other card deck is probably better than the 100 card of those decks because it doesn't have the same consistency boost when you double up cards.
That's a true point. But what I'm trying to say here is I feel like every 57 card deck is probably better as a 50 card deck in general. And I know
yes.
I've argued for 57 cards before. Like there was a time when I was first starting out and I was playing Thieves in New Testament Gold, and I was like, maybe 57 is the new standard, because if you just block them one extra time and you run them out of defense, and then you get to start running through, I've argued for it before, but I've come to the conclusion that probably it's just 57 is just a bad 50 usually.
Yes,
to me. And I think 100 is not like that. I think 100 is different. And like you said, yes, some brigades cannot pull off 100. That's totally true. I'm just saying 100 separates itself in a different way. 57 just feels like a bad version of 50. 100 is a new animal altogether. And one thing I'm interested in seeing is if the game prints enough good cards to where 100 cards gets seen by more brigades and gets seen more play, what if they have to change the rules for Type 1 to limit it to 57 to 64 to something like that? And I think that might be an interesting thing to think about, because honestly, I don't want to see Type 1 become a 100 card format. And I think it's possible that it could be someday if we keep on the same path. I'm not saying it will be, but I see that as one of those possible futures, Doctor Strange style, looking at the future. Like I could see 100 cards being the one of those things. And I think that maybe it would be a good idea for the rules to change to limit Type 1 to 60, 64, 60, 57, something like that. But I'm interested. I have a slight, a little bit of faith in 100 card decks. Not full faith in them, but I think that they could be something that we see more of in the future. So that's what I'd say.
Okay. So I will circle back to your one point of a 57 card deck is usually a worse version of a 50 card deck. I will agree with that 100%. I think the best that a deck can be is 49 in the hopper, generally. And then if there's certain outlier cases where maybe you don't want to run hopper, like you're running Moses or something, where you're more than likely going to have that card negated when it comes into play, then maybe just a straight 50 card deck, no hopper.
No. Let me fight you on this one real quick. Hopper is not good because it's Solgen. That's the gravy. The reason why Hopper is good is because it reduces your deck size by 1. So even if you're negating your own Hopper, that's okay. The only problem with Hopper is if it ruins your Unity for Meek Souls, and that's a problem for Hopper. But that's what I'd say on that one.
Yes, and 95% of the time I would agree with that thought. I'm just saying I feel like there's some outliers to where maybe you want, instead of that card that's just going to come into play and thin your deck, maybe you want an actual card that's going to give you a little bit more impact at a certain point. Just tomato on that. Anyway, yes, I think 49 in the hopper is optimal. But the question here, back to the original thing from Robar, is are we likely to see a trend toward larger decks? And my standing is that if we see a trend toward larger decks, I think the trend is more to 57 versus 100, at least in the near future. Depending on how Tim does, if he goes to Nationals and wins with a 100-card Clay deck, then all bets are off, because next year there's always copycats that want to play the latest winning deck. But could you just imagine on your turn games when they list out the deck that won Nationals and the price? It's going to be $1,200 for Big Clay because it's doubled up on a lot of things. I guess you save some money because there's a lot of Meek Souls, but double ultra rares here and there, potentially, stuff like that.
To counter your final point, and I'll take the other side of it, I wouldn't be surprised to see 2+ 100 card decks in the top 8 at Nationals. I would be very surprised to see 2+ 57 card decks at National. I just don't think. I think that anytime you run into somebody running 57 card deck, they're just trying to figure out how to get down to 50, and they're just playing it out to get used to that.
100%.
And I don't see 57 card decks being at the spot right now. So I could be wrong, but that's my forecast on that.
Okay. So we're just bound to argue here on this point, right?
Yeah, we're bound to argue. That's okay.
I give a final point, you get one in.
Yeah.
I am not playing a 57 card deck currently, and I don't have any plans to. I also don't have plans to play a 100 card deck. But you almost got into our next question here a little bit. Do you have a final point?
I have a final joke.
Ahead.
We should all be 49ers. 49ers and one hopper. Man, that is awesome. Let's be 49ers. Let's go 49ers.
Hey, that's what my tag on my car says.
Yeah. 49ers and a hopper.
No, it doesn't say hopper. The hopper's implied, I guess. But anyway, you almost got into our second question here when you started talking about some of the rules and maybe having to change and alter them. But this question, and this, we'll just say this is from Anonymous. There is no name attached to this one. But does traditionally held deck building principles and philosophies change with the latest set of updates to the rules? And if so, how should they adjust? And I think the biggest implication from this question I'm thinking about is all of the support cards that now, once they're in play, they don't require a permanent answer. You can just shuffle them or whatever, and they don't impact that battle anymore. Cards going away like that. Because it used to be that, okay, if you had an impactful fortress, it would come down and you knew you were getting, unless there was a way that they were going to negate it. And there's fewer ways to negate and remove it than there are just to remove it. And if you no longer get the impact of that ongoing ability through that battle, then do you run less support and utility cards that fill that role? Or do you lean more into cards that impact the battle as far as characters and enhancements? And I think that's where this question is leaning, is trying to gauge is how having some of those, because I think that's the biggest impactful thing from the latest rule changes. There's also the fact that you can't check more than one deck at Nationals. So, I mean, that could lean into, more pressure on your decision of what to play at Nationals, like we mentioned with Tim and Big Clay. But I think this is more targeting the gameplay implications of those permanent effects being removed once those cards are removed. So do you think that makes you adjust how you build decks now, or what do you think?
I think it does adjust deck building, but I think it adjusts it more on the card level than on the macro level here. I guess in the macro level, you have to understand that your forts are less powerful. Your permanent cards are less powerful out there. So I guess that does change how much you rely on forts, on powerful cards like that. Like if you put your storehouse out there and it gets shuffled in the middle of battle, then it's no longer protecting your hand. That is true. That is something that can really change things. So in the most broad sense, yeah, there's a macro effect in that you're going to be less reliant on forts and other permanent effects like artifacts out there. Confusion of Mind comes to mind, stuff like that that couldn't be negated, but now you get rid of them, they're turned off. That does really weaken those cards quite a bit. It does increase the strength of cards at like Lost Child Found that could bounce those cards instead of just negating them. So
Josh Sword.
Yeah, Josh Sword, exactly. And that's very important to realize. So as far as like overarching deck philosophies, I don't think it changes much, but on the macro sense, it does change how you weight forts. It does change how you weight counters to cards like that.
So if you're talking about earlier, 57 is just a worse version of 50 because you couldn't decide what to cut to get down. If you're in that situation or something like that, you're at Mr. Hiatus himself. Tyler Stevens likes to put out decks, and he's like, yeah, I'm at 53 right now. I'd like to be down at 50. It's always 53 with him. I haven't figured out why it's 53. But if you're trying to figure out, I feel like the way that things change the most is now I'm probably looking at a utility card to get rid of because you can get more lasting impact from a character. Maybe not an enhancement just yet. We haven't seen the tide turn on that to where you're able to freely play enhancements enough to where, I'd rather have that enhancement than that fortress. But I feel like there's probably a little bit more willingness to cut a support card now because one card coming down and getting rid of it, like shuffling it or whatever, gives you less impact from that card for the game. In the moment, it could be less impactful than it would otherwise. But I think also another way that deck building changes is if you have access in a brigade or a theme that you're playing to have a way to answer cards more generically, like a Josh Sword, obviously you're playing that anyway, but an ability like that to where you can target anything, like you can shuffle a card, knowing that the ability is going to go away now. Yes, Noah. Or even Melchizedek from Roots in the Genesis theme, being able to make sure that ability turns off instantly is going to make me more willing to play a character that has that broad ability where previously it wouldn't have been as impactful because that fortress would still have the lasting ability throughout that battle phase or, whatever phase that you were able to get that answer. So I think on the flip side of that, I think I would be more willing to play something that I wouldn't have played, 6 months ago because it can now help me a little bit more by getting rid of something instantly versus, it's still lasting through the phase. So I think
agree on that.
It makes you consider some cards that maybe previously was just written off immediately. I don't know that Noah is going to be like a crazy one that people are going to play because
you're telling me people are going to play Noah into Prince of the Air?
Yeah, they're going to convert that bad boy. He's going to be sitting on the table. Highwayman's going to eat him up, and then you're going to eventually ban
Highwayman to Judas to Prince of the Air.
Yes, and you're going to get hit 7 ways of Sunday.
No. First, Messenger of Satan to Highwayman to Judas to Prince of the Air. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Demon Thieves do not like Genesis, or Genesis does not like Demon Thieves. But I know Genesis doesn't like thieves anyway because of Highwayman. I learned that the hard way. But yeah, so I guess I think that at least early on here, it's going to be minuscule, any changes that the new rules have for deck building. But I could see over time, let's give it 6-8 months, like get through nationals and then, analyze what the tournament season was. I could see less reliance on all of the support cards because they go away, or the way that maybe some design philosophy is starting to move towards with Promised Land comes down, instant ability, you get it. And then if they get rid of it, you're getting another use out of it. So maybe you rely on fortresses and things that give you almost that instant ability versus an ongoing ability. And I think some of that over time is bound to change a little bit. I'm just not sure how much it changes.
Agreed. 100% agreed with you there. I'm not taking
You're not going to argue.
Side.
Hey,
not going to argue.
That's a win. Yes. But anyway, this has been I hope a good episode for you, but we're going to go ahead and chunk the deuces, and we'll catch you next time, hopefully with some more tournament results and see where the power rankings land after we get a couple more tournaments done.
We're chunking.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Threshing Floor Podcast. Help us grow our community by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss the next episode. And we'll talk to you next time on the Threshing Floor Podcast.